All right, so are you ready to really get into the perks of being a wallflower?
I am. It's such a great book.
It is. And like always, you, our awesome listeners, provided the source material for this deep dive.
That's right.
And we're going to unearth the coolest and most interesting stuff we can.
Absolutely.
So what's really interesting about the perks of being a wallflower is that it's completely written as letters
Yeah.
from our main character, Charlie.
Yeah.
And so right from the get-go, we're getting like this super personal view
Yeah.
into his world.
Right into his head.
And boy, does he have a lot going on. Charlie's dealing with being a freshman in high school,
Oh, yeah.
and, that's tough enough as it is.
It's a whole new world.
It is, but he's also dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we learn that his friend Michael committed suicide, and Charlie himself is, going through anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And we even see some flashbacks, which, kind of suggests that there might be some, past trauma.
Yeah, some things he's still working through.
Yeah, that he's still carrying with him.
For sure.
It's really, powerful how Chbosky, the author,
Yes.
portrays Charlie's mental health challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely. He does it with such sensitivity.
He does, yeah.
And realism.
Yeah.
Like you really feel
You do.
the weight of Charlie's anxiety, his depression. But, there's a glimmer of hope, too.
There is, yeah.
He's not just defined by his struggles.
Right.
And that's a huge message for anyone who's ever felt lost or overwhelmed.
Especially during those teenage years.
Exactly. That's when it hits hardest, I think.
It is. And as if that wasn't enough.
Right.
To be dealing with, in turn.
Yeah.
His family life adds this whole other level of complexity.
Oh, for sure. Like a whole nother layer of stuff to deal with.
All right. Because he describes his family, seemingly like pretty typical.
Yeah.
Like he has an older brother who is like a star athlete. He's off at college. He's got a popular sister.
The kind of family you see on TV,
Yeah, totally. And, like well-meaning parents.
Yeah.
But then as we get deeper into the story, you start to see
The crack.
yeah, these like cracks in, how they present themselves,
Yeah.
There's like these unspoken tensions. There's like secrets kind of bubbling under the surface.
Always something beneath the surface.
Always. It makes you realize that like even the families that seem the most normal
Absolutely.
can have these really like complicated.
Complicated, for sure. Like their own issues going on.
Yeah, totally.
Underneath it all. Yeah.
And it's, like just when it seems like Charlie is like the most alone, right?
At his lowest.
Yeah, he meets Sam and Patrick.
Sam and Patrick.
Yeah, and they're this super charismatic duo,
Such a great pair.
They are. And they basically become his guides.
To high school, to life, to everything.
Yeah, to the whole high school universe, like
The mentors everyone wishes they had.
they really are. And I mean, they take him to parties. Oh, yeah.
They introduce him to, like, the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
A classic.
Yeah. They basically, become his lifeline.
Totally. Like the people he can depend on
Yeah.
when he needs it most.
They're, like, so important to him, especially during this, like, really intense period of, self-discovery.
Yeah, yeah. They give him that sense of belonging.
They do, yeah.
That he's clearly craving,
Yeah, totally. Like, they're filling this, like, void, not just socially.
Exactly. It's deeper than that.
Yeah, but, like, emotionally, too.
Emotionally, for sure.
Which is, like, so important for someone like Charlie who's,
Dealing with so much.
dealing with so much already.
Absolutely.
And so as Charlie's, kind of, like, stumbling through these new experiences,
Yeah.
he makes these, like, really insightful observations.
He's a smart kid.
He is, yeah.
He is.
Even when he doesn't realize it.
Yeah. About, like, love and relationships.
That's something we all struggle with.
Oh, yeah. And, there's this one line that he has that really stuck with me.
Oh, tell me.
He says, "We accept the love we think we deserve."
Oh, wow.
It's like such a simple line, but it's like so deep,
Absolutely. It's so true.
It is, yeah.
Like it's a gut punch because it speaks to this, like,
He really
universal truth about how our past experiences and our self-worth,
yeah.
really shape the relationships that we have.
Yeah.
It's like we internalize these, like, beliefs,
I know, yeah.
about ourselves, and those beliefs, they become like these self-fulfilling prophecies.
You really do.
Influencing the kinds of connections we seek.
Yeah.
And even the way we allow ourselves to be treated.
It's like wild.
It's crazy.
It's almost like Charlie is saying we create these invisible barriers.
Yeah.
Based on, what we believe we deserve. And then those barriers, sometimes stop us from
finding true love.
Yeah, or, from experiencing those
Yeah,
really fulfilling relationship.
exactly. And this whole idea of, self-worth,
Yeah.
it ties directly into another, like, pivotal scene in the book.
Oh, yeah.
The party where Charlie sees his sister's boyfriend hit her.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Heavy stuff.
It is. And he chooses to, step in,
Yeah.
which, takes huge courage.
Oh, absolutely.
But it also creates this, like, big rift in his family.
It does. It changes everything.
Yeah. That scene really got to me
Me too.
because it just, brings up all these issues about, like, abuse and, like, the role of
It
bystanders.
makes you think, what would you do?
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. It makes you, like, ask yourself, what would I do in that situation?
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, like, not always so clear, right? Like,
Yeah.
what the right thing to do is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Chbosky, the author, he doesn't shy away from, like, showing the messy aftermath
No.
of Charlie's decision to get involved.
Yeah, like, it's not tied up in a neat little bow.
No, at all.
And amid all of this, we see Charlie's, like, passion for literature and writing
Oh, yes.
really start to, like, grow,
Blossom.
Yeah, he, like, devours these books. He shares
Yeah.
all these insightful thoughts about authors,
Yeah.
and he starts using writing as a way to, kind of, like, work through his experiences.
Well, yeah.
Like, his outlet.
Totally. Like, it's such a critical part of the story,
It really is.
His writing becomes like this sanctuary for him.
It does, yeah.
A place where he can, like, explore his thoughts and feelings
Yeah.
without judgment.
Yeah. It's like he's finding his voice,
Yeah.
not just as a writer, but as a person,
Absolutely.
which is, like, super powerful, right?
So powerful. And it makes you think about,
Yeah.
maybe Chbosky's trying to say that,
Yeah.
being creative can actually be like a way to heal,
Yeah.
like a way to confront those,
Well,
like,
Those inner demons. Yeah.
inner demons
Mhm.
and find some meaning in, all the craziness of life.
Yeah, and it makes you think, like, maybe he's saying that, like, the very act of, expressing yourself creatively
Yeah.
can be healing.
I think he is.
Yeah. And that's a message that, like, goes way beyond this book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a message for everyone.
It really is. We all have our own ways of, expressing ourselves,
Sure.
going through our experiences and finding our own voices,
Yeah.
And that's what makes us human, right?
I think so. Yeah.
And for Charlie, like, finding his voice is really tied up with his relationships.
Yeah.
He develops this, like, really complicated connection with Mary Elizabeth.
Mary Elizabeth. Yeah.
And she's, like, she seems to be his intellectual equal,
Right.
but then romantically, they're, like, just not a match,
Yeah. Not a good fit.
Yeah, it's kind of like that classic right person, wrong time kind of thing,
My classic for sure.
I mean, they bond over books and movies,
Yeah.
but, like, emotionally, they're just not on the same page.
No. And it's a good reminder that even if you have, like,
Yeah.
interests in common,
Yeah. Yeah.
true compatibility, it goes much deeper.
Oh, it totally does.
It's more than just liking the same bands.
Totally. And it brings us to, like, one of the most heartbreaking parts of the book, which is watching Charlie's mental health really start to, like, decline.
Deteriorates, yeah.
Yeah, it's like as all these relationships and, like, experiences kind of pile up, he, like, reaches this breaking point,
He does.
and it ultimately leads to, a breakdown and him being hospitalized.
Yeah.
It's just so sad to see him go through that.
Oh, it is. Especially because, you see him really trying to
Thanks. Good night.
cope,
Yeah.
to hold it all together.
He really is trying his best.
He is. But, sometimes even the strongest people,
Yeah,
they need help.
they do.
And that's totally okay.
And that's okay.
That's something we all need to remember.
And that's where I think Chbosky's portrayal of mental illness is so important,
It is.
Like, it's not, it's not all glamorous or sensationalized.
No, it's real.
It's real, it's honest.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that seeking help, from a professional
Yes.
is not, a sign of weakness.
Absolutely not.
It's a sign of strength.
It really is.
And that's, like, a message that we need to hear, over and over again, especially, young people who might be
struggling silently.
yeah, struggling without anyone knowing,
Yeah.
It's so important.
It's so important.
So we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
But there's, like, still so much to unpack in this book,
There's more to talk about.
So in the next part, we're going to really get into, like, Charlie's relationships, his past, and this, like, pivotal New Year's Eve party that kind of changes everything for him, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. That party. I
Yeah.
can't wait.
So until then, keep reading.
Keep thinking.
And we'll be back soon with more on the perks of being a wallflower.
Sounds good. It's interesting, as we keep going deeper into the perks of being a wallflower.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how Chbosky, the author, kind of weaves together
Yeah.
all these seemingly different parts of Charlie's life.
Right.
His family stuff, his friendships that are starting to develop those kind of
Yeah.
awkward first forays into romance.
Yeah.
And then his own internal struggles.
Right.
They all come together to create this really rich picture
Yeah.
of, what it's like to be a teenager.
They really do.
Yeah, it's not just a story about this kid who's, having a tough time. It's this really nuanced look at how, all those outside forces and those internal struggles
Yeah.
all interact to shape who we become.
It really is, yeah. And one of the things that I think really adds to that depth is,
What's that?
Charlie's relationship with his Aunt Helen.
Oh, yeah, Aunt Helen.
Right. He mentions her throughout the novel, and we learn that she passed away when he was younger.
Yeah.
And it's clear that her absence is something that he still really feels.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way he keeps revisiting these memories of her.
Yeah.
It's like he's trying to, put together a puzzle or something,
Yeah.
trying to understand her past.
Yeah.
And how it, affected him.
Right. Especially as he's, facing his own challenges.
Exactly.
Her memory just seems to loom larger.
It takes on more significance.
It really does, yeah. And those challenges really, come to a head
Oh, yeah.
at the end of the novel, especially at that New Year's Eve party.
Right.
It's everything just kind of unravels for him. You know, Sam is leaving for college.
Right.
His feelings for her are just so complicated, and he's starting to realize that he's not the only one
Who's carrying around all this pain.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that New Year's Eve party. It's this huge turning point because it becomes this catalyst for Charlie's breakdown. He sees everyone else seemingly moving on with their lives.
Yeah.
And it just triggers this wave of emotions that he's been holding back.
Yeah, he's been suppressing for so long.
Yeah, exactly. And he starts to feel really alone.
Yeah.
Even though he's surrounded by all these people.
Yeah. It's that feeling of being alone in a crowd,
Yeah, totally.
He even says that he understands the end of this poem about suicide.
All right.
Which is just so heartbreaking.
It is. It really underscores the fact that, mental health struggles, you can't always see them.
No, you can't.
On the surface, you can be surrounded by people and still feel completely isolated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It highlights, just how complex mental health really is.
Charlie's breakdown, it's not just because of this one thing that happens,
Right.
It's all of this stuff, both inside and outside of him, that's been building up.
Right.
And it just shows how important it is.
It does.
To remember that what you see on the outside doesn't always reflect what's going on, under the surface.
Totally. Yeah. And in this really fragile state, Charlie drives to this big boy restaurant.
Oh, the big boy.
Yeah, which is this place that holds all these memories for him.
Yeah, it's like his safe space almost.
Yeah, it is. And there's this really, poignant part where he's describing driving through this tunnel and feeling infinite.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so beautiful and so sad at the same time.
It is. That tunnel scene is just so, so powerful.
Yeah.
Because tunnels in literature, they often represent transitions,
Yeah.
Going from one state to another.
Right.
Think of it as this, journey through the darkness.
Yeah.
Representing the unknown.
Maybe even.
A rebirth.
Right.
And I think in this case, it's Charlie trying to, navigate this murky area between being a teenager and being an adult.
Totally.
He's longing for something.
Yeah.
But he can't quite grasp it.
He can't quite put his finger on it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He's trying to, hold on to that feeling of infinity, that sense of, limitless possibility that we often have when we're young.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's hitting up against the reality.
The harsh reality.
Yeah, the harsh realities of growing up and having to face the world.
And face it alone.
Yeah, face the world on his own. And sadly, tragically, all of this leads to
his breakdown.
Yeah, his breakdown. He ends up, kind of wandering off into the snow.
Yeah.
Just completely overwhelmed by
everything.
Yeah, by all the trauma and pain.
It's almost like the snow represents.
It does.
That isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And it's like heartbreaking to see him reach that point.
It is.
But what I find even more like striking is how Chbosky shows us what comes after.
Yeah, the aftermath of all that.
Yeah. So Charlie wakes up in the hospital, just like disoriented, confused, and it leaves you with this like really uneasy feeling that things might never be the same.
Yeah, that things have fundamentally shifted.
Yeah, and it's not just like the outside things that have changed, right? It's like his internal world too.
His whole perspective.
Yeah. The novel ends with him writing this final letter, but this time it's not to like this anonymous friend.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know? And so that kind of suggests that like something has shifted in the way he's seeing things. Like he's more willing to like confront his past and who he is.
Like he's not hiding anymore?
No, he's not hiding behind those letters anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's in this final letter that he finally like tells us what happened to Aunt Helen.
I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, and he shares that she was, sexually abused by a family friend when she was a child.
Wow.
Which is like this, this revelation that just seems to like unlock so many of his own like repressed memories and pain.
Oh, wow. And that's so powerful because it like, it links Charlie's mental health struggles.
It does.
To this bigger issue, in society, which is this idea of intergenerational trauma.
Right.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
It's basically like this idea that, trauma can be passed down through generations.
Right.
And it affects people even if they didn't directly experience, the traumatic event themselves.
Right. Like it can still have this like ripple effect.
Yeah, totally. So in Charlie's case, his aunt's experience, which wasn't his own, right? But it still left this like undeniable mark on him.
It did.
And it contributed to, all the emotional stuff he's dealing with.
Right. Yeah.
So it adds this like whole other layer
It does.
to the book's exploration of mental health.
Yeah.
And it shows that sometimes our struggles, they come from experiences that go way beyond our own lives.
Totally. It's like, it's incredibly poignant, and as difficult as it is to like face these truths, it also feels like,
a turning point.
Yeah, like a turning point for Charlie.
Yeah.
He realizes that even though his aunt's experience is a part of his story, it doesn't have to like define him.
Right. He's acknowledging it.
Yeah.
But he's not letting it like consume him.
Yeah.
And that's like really powerful.
Yeah.
It shows how resilient people can be. It suggests that even when you're facing huge pain, there's still room for growth.
Yeah.
For self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And for hope.
It's like a little glimmer of light.
It is.
In all the darkness. And even though, Charlie still has a long way to go in terms of recovery.
For sure.
There's this like feeling of optimism in that last letter.
Yeah.
He talks about the support he's getting, from his family, his therapist, and even Bill.
Bill, his English teacher?
Yeah, his English teacher who becomes like this unexpected mentor for him.
Right.
And that network of support is like, super crucial for Charlie to, to heal.
Yeah. It emphasizes that even when we feel alone.
Yeah.
We're not really alone, There are people who care and who want to help us through those tough times.
Yeah. And, it's interesting how Chbosky uses that, like, the letter format to show us that sense of connection.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Even though Charlie is writing to, like, this anonymous person.
Yeah.
The fact that he's writing at all is, like, a way of reaching out, you know? It's like he's
sharing his story.
Yeah, sharing his story and trying to like, be understood.
Yeah, and that format, those letters, it adds this layer of intimacy.
It does, yeah.
And vulnerability to the story.
Yeah, it's like we're
right there with him.
Yeah, we're right there with him, like looking right into his thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, and that creates this really unique connection between like the reader and the character.
It does.
Yeah.
It's almost as if like we're getting those letters ourselves,
Yeah.
And we become part of like his support system.
Yeah, that shared experience,
Yeah.
of seeing his journey firsthand.
Yeah.
It makes his story even more powerful.
It really does, yeah. And so while, Charlie's story, like, it comes to an end, its journey of, healing and self-discovery.
Right.
It feels very much like it's still going on.
Yeah, it does.
And what's really cool about the perks of being a wallflower is that it doesn't, like, wrap everything up perfectly,
Yeah, there are still questions.
Yeah, there are questions. And it leaves us with this feeling of hope that Charlie will, continue to grow and find his place.
That's a comma.
It is.
Not a period,
Yeah.
Like a pause.
Yeah, pause in the story.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, like, what happens next.
Exactly, yeah, for Charlie.
And in a way, that's, like, more realistic and maybe even more hopeful.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it suggests that, like, healing and growing, those are, like...
ongoing things.
Yeah, ongoing processes. They're not, like...
destinations.
Yeah, they're not like, you arrive here and you're done.
Right. It's life,
Yeah, it mirrors life, doesn't it?
It does. We're constantly changing.
We are.
Facing new things.
Yeah.
And learning as we go.
Yeah. And I think that's, like, a message that really resonates with, young readers especially.
Oh, absolutely.
Who are, like, still, figuring out who they are and where they fit in.
Exactly. And it's like Chbosky's saying, it's okay to not have all the answers.
Yeah.
To feel uncertain about the future.
Yeah.
Just keep exploring.
Yeah.
Keep growing.
Keep growing, yeah.
And keep looking for those connections.
Yeah.
That make life,
that make life meaningful.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, like, beautiful way to, like, sum it up.
Yeah. And so we've come to the end of our,
deep dive
into the perks of being a wallflower.
And I'm just so impressed by, Chbosky's ability to show us what it's like to be a teenager.
Yeah.
With such honesty and grace.
He does.
Yeah. And I'm also, really grateful for the power of stories to bring us together.
Yeah.
To help us feel less alone.
Yeah.
And to remind us that even when things are tough.
Yeah.
There's always hope.
There is.
Yeah. It's a really powerful message.
It is.
Yeah.
And, I just keep thinking, like, what would Charlie be like today?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, what would he be doing?
I've thought about that, too.
Yeah.
I like to think he'd be a writer.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Or maybe even a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone who uses his own experiences to help others.
That's awesome. Like, turning his pain into purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah. And maybe, just maybe he's still, like,
writing letters.
Yeah, finding comfort in writing letters and, like, sharing his wisdom and insights, with people who meet them.
I love that.
Yeah. It speaks to, like, the enduring power of Charlie's story.
Yeah.
And the, like, the impact it still has on people.
Right.
So as we, like, say goodbye to Charlie and his world, I hope this deep dive has, like, given you a new appreciation for the power of storytelling, the importance of human connection and that message of hope that really shines through even in,
the darkest times.
Yeah, the darkest of times.
Yeah. And remember, the conversation doesn't have to stop here.
It doesn't.
Keep reading.
Yeah.
Keep thinking. And
That's
keep your heart open to all the possibilities.
To all the possibilities, yeah. All right, so we're wrapping up our deep dive into the perks of being a wallflower. And I'm still thinking about, one question.
Yeah, shoot.
What is it about this book? It was written over 30 years ago.
I know.
But it still resonates with so many people today.
Right.
Like, why? What is it about this book that's so timeless?
It's like, he wrote this time capsule or something.
It did, yeah.
Of, like, what it feels like to be a teenager.
I really did.
Capturing those feelings of isolation and, like, that yearning to belong.
Yeah.
That desperate search for connection.
Right. And it's something that we all experience.
We do. I mean, we all crave belonging, that feeling of being seen and understood.
Totally.
And Charlie's journey, even though it's awkward and kind of painful sometimes.
It is, yeah.
It, like, totally reflects that longing.
It does, yeah.
Exactly.
And I think, the way Chbosky uses those letters, that form,
The epistolary form.
Yes, thank you. It adds this, like, really intimate
it does.
layer to the story. It's almost like we're peeking in.
We are. It's like we're peeking into his like diary almost.
Yeah, like we shouldn't be reading it.
Right. But we can't look away.
Exactly. We're like right there with him, experiencing all of his most private, thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. And that rawness is like, it's compelling, but it's also kind of unsettling.
It is, yeah. It's like we're his confidants, the only people he's sharing this with.
Yeah, and it's like it creates this visceral connection with him.
It does.
That goes beyond, time.
It transcends time, yeah.
And it makes sense why people, from all generations find themselves connecting with his story.
It makes sense, yeah.
And I mean, we can't forget the way Chbosky deals with those heavy topics.
Oh, yeah, right.
Like, mental health, trauma, abuse.
Yeah.
He's so sensitive and honest.
He really is, yeah.
And he doesn't, like, sugarcoat anything.
No, he doesn't, like, offer easy answers.
No.
He just lays it all out there.
He does. It's like he's inviting us to, like, struggle with these issues right alongside Charlie.
He is. Which makes us, question our own, biases and ideas about these things.
And I think that's, like, a huge part of why this book still matters today, It
does, yeah.
It doesn't shy away from the dark stuff.
No, it doesn't.
But it also shows us those moments of hope,
It does,
These little glimpses of connection and resilience that make us, like, want to keep going.
They do, yeah. It does it in a way that feels, both authentic and, like, hopeful without, like, minimizing the pain Charlie goes through. Almost like he's saying life is going to be tough and messy, but there's still beauty in it,
And I think that's a message everyone can relate to.
I do too, yeah.
Especially if you've ever felt, alone or misunderstood.
Right.
And then another thing about this book that I think keeps people coming back is the way it ends.
Oh, yeah. The end.
It's not, like, wrapped up in a bow.
No, it's not.
Like, and they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
We see Charlie healing.
We do. Yeah.
He's starting to find his voice.
Yeah.
He's letting people in. But there's still this, like, question mark,
Yeah, there is.
about what's going to happen.
Right.
What's going to happen to him.
Totally. It's like a comma,
It is.
Not a period.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a pause in the story.
The pause.
And it makes you wonder what's next for Charlie.
Right. Like, what happens after the letters stop?
Yeah. And honestly, I think that kind of ending is, like, more hopeful.
I think so, yeah.
Because it means that, healing and growing doesn't just stop.
No, it's a journey.
It's a journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Like life itself, right?
Exactly. We're always changing and growing.
Always.
And we're always facing new challenges.
Always, yeah.
I think that resonates with young people, especially.
Absolutely.
Those who are still trying to figure things out.
Yeah, totally. Like Chbosky's saying, it's okay to not know everything.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel unsure.
It's okay to not have it all figured out.
Exactly. Just keep exploring.
Keep exploring. Keep growing.
Yeah, keep growing. Exactly.
And, find those connections.
The connections, yeah.
That really make life worth living.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. So we've reached the end of our deep dive into the perks of being a wallflower.
And, I'm so glad we did this.
Me too.
I'm so impressed by Chbosky.
Oh, yeah.
And how he captured this, like, the teen experience with such honesty and grace.
Absolutely. And I'm just really grateful,
Yeah, me too. For stories like this.
Yeah.
They remind us that we're not alone.
No, we're not.
And there's always hope.
There is.
Even when things are hard.
Even when things are really hard, makes you think, What do you think Charlie would be doing now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think he would be someone who helps others.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a writer or a therapist using his experiences to make a difference.
Yeah. It's like turning his pain into purpose.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, he's still out there writing letters.
Writing letters. Yeah.
Sharing what he's learned.
I love that.
Yeah. And that's like the power of his story, It
is.
It keeps going even after we finish the book.
It does.
So as we say goodbye to Charlie and his world, I hope this deep dive has reminded you.
It has.
Of how powerful stories can be.
Yeah.
How important it is to connect with each other. And that even in dark times, there's always hope.
There is. Always. Well, that's it for our deep dive into the perks of being a wallflower.
It was great talking about it.
It really was. What a great book.
Such a classic.
It is. I hope you enjoyed it. And, the conversation doesn't have to end here.
That's right.
Keep thinking about the book.
Yeah.
Keep talking about it.
And keep your heart open.
To all the possibilities.
To all the possibilities. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.